No guilt, no guilt.
Love you. Not much people feel the same way though. first level was so much. Did you ever see you doing good? Everyone good? Okay. We decided to. Nice. Okay.
Hello, this is Ebenezer Scrooge, and welcome to American Heritage School and to this production of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Your attendance is greatly appreciated. At this time, it would be favourable for you and those around your immediate person to put away your cellular phone device. If there is any need to use the washroom, it is located in the hall by the entrance to the auditorium. Immediately following Act 1, there will be a brief intermission. And now, please join us in a word of prayer.
Heavenly Father, we're grateful to be here, and we're grateful for Jay Ernest and all of his preparation. And we're also thankful for Mike Butler and all of the other production people, and we ask that Jake will do well in his performance, and that You'll be able to feel our support and that we'll have a good evening in Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Marley was dead. To begin with, there is no doubt whatever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clerk, the clergyman, the undertaker, and the chief mourner Scrooge signed it. Old Marley was dead as a doornail. A doornail. It is an interesting choice of words. One might say that a coffin nail might be more suitable. But nevertheless, a doornail it is, and Marley was dead as one. Scrooge knew he was dead. Of course he did. How could it be otherwise? Scrooge and he were partners for, I don't know how many years. Scrooge was his sole executor, his sole administrator, his sole regiduary legatee, his sole aside, his sole friend, and sole mourner. There is no doubt that Marley was dead. This must be distinctly understood, or nothing wonderful can come from the story I am going to relate. Scrooge never painted out old Marley's name. There it stood years afterwards above the warehouse door. Scrooge and Marley. Oh, but he was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone, Scrooge, a squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner. Hard and sharp as flint, secret and self-contained and solitary as an oyster. External heat and cold had little influence on Scrooge. No warmth could warm, no wintry weather chilled him. No wind that blew was bitterer than he. No falling snow less intent upon its purpose. No pelting rain less open to entreaty. No one ever stopped him in the streets to say with gladsome looks, "Oh, my dear Mr. Scrooge, how are you? When will you come to see me?" No beggars bestowed him a trifle. No children asked him what time it was o'clock. No man or woman ever once in all his life inquired the way to such and such a place of Scrooge. But what did Scrooge care? It was the very thing he liked, to edge his way along the crowded paths of life, warning all human sympathy to keep its distance. Once upon a time, on all the good days of the year, on Christmas Eve, Scrooge sat busy in his counting house. It was cold, bleak, biting weather, and he could hear the people in the court outside go wheezing up and down, beating their hands upon their breasts, and stamping their feet upon the pavement stones to warm them. The city clocks had only just gone 3, but it was quite dark already. It had not been lighted all day, and candles were beginning to flare in the offices and in their windows. Scrooge sat busy in his counting house, and the door of it was open, so that he might keep an eye upon his clerk, Bob Cratchit, who in a little dismal cell beyond, a sort of tank, was busy copying letters. Scrooge had a small fire, but the clerk's was so very much smaller that it looked like one coal, and Cratchit couldn't replenish it, for Scrooge kept the coal box in his own room. "A Merry Christmas, Uncle! God save you!" cried a cheerful voice. It was the voice of Scrooge's nephew, who came upon him so quickly that this was the first intimation he had of his approach. "Bah! Humbug! Christmas a humbug, Uncle? You don't mean that, I'm sure. I do. Merry Christmas. What right have you to be merry? What reason have you to be merry? You're tall enough. Oh, come then, Uncle. What right have you to be morose? What right have you to be dismal? What right do you have to be searching agony and despair? You're rich enough. Bah! Humbug! Don't be cross, Uncle. What else can I be when I live in such a world of fools? Merry Christmas, out upon Merry Christmas. What's Christmas time to you but a time for paying bills without money? A time for finding yourself a year older and not an hour richer? If I could work my will, every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled in his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart. He should. Uncle, my nephew, you keep Christmas in your own way and let me keep it in mine. But you don't keep it at all. Let me leave it alone then. Much good it has done you, much good it has ever done you. I believe Christmas has done me good, and will do me good, and I say, God bless it. The clerk involuntarily applauded, and then, becoming immediately so sensible of the impropriety, poked the fire and extinguished the last frail spark forever. Let me hear another word from you, Cratchit, and you'll keep your Christmas by losing your situation. Oh, don't be angry with him, Uncle. Come, dine with us tomorrow. Why ever did you get married? Because I fell in love. Because you fell in love. Oh, good afternoon. Nay, Uncle, but you never gave that as a reason for not coming to see me then. Why give it as a reason for not coming now? Good afternoon. I am sorry with all my heart to find you so resolute. We have never had any quarrel to which I have been a party, but I have made this visit in homage of Christmas, and I'll keep my Christmas humour to the last. So, a Merry Christmas, Uncle! Good afternoon. And a Happy New Year! Good afternoon. His nephew left the room without an angry word notwithstanding. He stopped at the door to say greetings of the season to the clerk, who returned them cordially. There's another fellow. My clerk, on 15 shillings a week, talking about a wife and a family, and speaking of a Merry Christmas. Bah! In letting Scrooge's nephew out, the clerk had let 2 other people in. They were portly gentlemen and pleasant to behold, and now stood with their hats off in Scrooge's office. They had books and papers in their hands, and they bowed to him. Scrooge and Marley, I believe. Do I have the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley? Mr. Marley has been dead these 7 years. He died 7 years ago this very night. Oh, well, we have no doubt his liberality is well represented by his surviving partner. This festive season of the year, Mr. Scrooge, it is more than usually desirable that we should offer some slight provision to the poor and destitute who suffer greatly at this present time. Are there no prisons? Well, plenty, sir. And the union workhouses, are they in full operation? Oh, they are, but I wish I could say they were not. And the treadmill and the polearm are in full vigor then? Oh, it is both very much, sir. Good. From what you said at the start, I was afraid that something had stopped them in their useful cause. I am very glad to hear it. Good. Well, a few of us are endeavouring to raise a fund to offer the poor some means of drink and means of warmth, Mr. Scrooge. And we choose this time as a time of all others, because it is definitely a time where warmth is keenly felt and abundance rejoices. What shall we put you down for? Marley. You wish to remain anonymous? Oh, my. I don't really think we've had that before. Let's put that name down, Mr. Scrooge. 2 O's, is that right? 2 O's, 1 G, 1, 3. Well, okay. Thank you. I wish to be left alone. Since you ask what I wish, gentlemen, that is my answer. I don't make myself merry at Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry. I help to support the establishments they have, and I have mentioned. They cost enough. Those who are badly off must go there. Oh, but many can't go there, and many would rather die. If they'd rather die, then they better do it! And decrease the surplus population. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Seeing that it was useless to pursue their point, the gentleman withdrew. Scrooge resumed his labours with an improved opinion of himself, and in a more facetious temperament than was usual with him. But the cold and darkness thickened so, and the fog became intense, so that people began running about with flaring lamps. And at length, the hour for shutting up the counting house arrived, and Scrooge, dismounting from his stool with an ill will, tacitly admitted the fact to the expecting clerk. You want all day tomorrow, I suppose? If quite convenient, sir. It's not convenient and it's not fair. If I paid you a shilling for it, you think yourself ill-used, but yet you don't think me ill-used if I pay a day's wages for no work. It's only once a year, sir. A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December. I suppose you must have the whole day. Be here all the earlier the next morning. Scrooge took his usual melancholy dinner at his usual melancholy tavern and went home. Now, it is a fact that there was nothing at all particular about the knocker on Scrooge's door, except that it was very large. It is also a fact that he had seen it both night and morning during his whole residency in that place. Let it also be borne in mind that Scrooge had not bestowed one thought on Marley since his last mention of his 7 years dead partner that afternoon. And then let any man explain to me how Scrooge, having his key in the lock of the door, saw in the knocker, not a knocker, but Marley's face. Marley's face. It was not angry or ferocious, but looked at Scrooge as Marley used to look, with its ghoulish spectacles turned upon its ghoulish forehead. That, and its livid colour, made it horrible. And Scrooge gazed fixedly upon this phenomenon. It was a knocker again. To say that he was not startled would be untrue. But, having his hand upon the key he had relinquished, he turned it sturdily, walked in, and lighted his candle. He did pause with a moment's irresolution, and then he fastened the door and walked across the hall and up the stairs too, slowly, trimming his candle as he went. Darkness is cheap. Scrooge liked it. Indeed, he liked it very much. But before he shut his heavy door, he walked through his rooms to see that all was right. He had just enough recollection of the face to desire to do that. Thus, quite satisfied, he locked himself in. Double locked himself in. Triple locked himself in, which was not his custom. Thus, secured against surprise, he sat down before the fire to take his gruel. Humbug! After several turns, he sat down again. And leaning his head back into his chair, his glance happened to rest upon a bell. A disused bell that hung in the corner of the room and communicated, for some purpose now forgotten, with the highest story which contained the highest chamber in the building. It was with great astonishment that as he looked upon this bell, it began to swing. It swung so softly at the outset that it scarcely made a sound. But soon it rang out loudly, and so did every bell in the house. Oh, no, no, no. It's humbug still. I won't believe it. Oh. His colour changed, though, when without a pause a figure came on through the heavy door and passed into the room before his eyes. As it did so, the dying flame leaped up as though it cried, "I know him! Marley's ghost!" and fell again. The same face, the very same. The chain that wound about its middle, and wound about it also like a tail, was made, for Scrooge observed it closely, of cash boxes, keys, ledgers, deeds, and heavy purses wrought in steel. Oh no. Oh, what do you want with me? Much. Who are you? Ask who I was. Who were you then? In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley. You don't believe in me, do you? No, I don't. What evidence would you have of my reality beyond that of your senses? I don't know. Why do you doubt your senses? Because a little thing affects them. A slight disorder of the stomach makes them cheat. You may be an undigested bit of beef, a pot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of underdone potato. Oh, yes, there's more of the gravy than the grave about you. Scrooge was not in the habit of cracking jokes. Nor did he feel himself particularly waggish in heart then. The truth is, he tried to be smart as a means of distracting himself and keeping down his terror. For the spirit's voice disturbed the very marrow in his bones. But at this, the spirit raised a frightful cry and shook its chain with such an abysmal noise that Scrooge had to hold on to his chair to keep from falling in a swoon. Scrooge, bending down upon a knee, clasped his hands together. Mercy, dreadful apparition, mercy. Man of the worldly mind, do you believe in me or not? Yes, I do. At this, the spirit again raised a cry and shook its chain and wrung its shadowy hands. Oh, you are fettered. Tell me why. I wear the chain I forged in life. I made it link by link and yard by yard. I gutted it on of my own free will, and of my own free will I wore it. Is its pattern strange to you? Or would you know the weight and length of the strong coil you bear yourself? It was full as heavy and as long as this 7 Christmas Eves ago. You have labored on it since. It is a ponderous chain. Jacob, speak comfort to me, Jacob. Speak comfort to me. I am here tonight to warn you that you have a chance and a hope of escaping my fate. A chance and a hope of my procuring Ebenezer. Thank you, Marley. You're always a good friend to me. Thank you. You will be haunted by 3 spirits. Is that the chance and hope you mentioned, Jacob? It is. Oh, I think I'd rather not. Without their visit, you cannot hope to shun the path I tread. Expect the first upon the next night, when the bell tolls 1. Couldn't I have them all at once, Jacob, and get it over with? Expect the second upon the next night, at the same hour, and the third upon the next night, when the last stroke of 12 has ceased to vibrate. Look to see me no more, and see to it, for your own sake, that you remember what is passed between us. At this, the spectre walked backward from him, and as it did so, the window raised itself a little, so that when the spectre reached it, it was wide open. Scrooge stopped, not so much in obedience as in fear, for at the raising of the window, he became sensible of incoherent noises in the air, lamentations and agony, inexpressible noises of self-accusatory and despair. The ghost, listening for just a moment, then joined in the mournful dirge and floated out upon the bleak, dark night. Scrooge closed the window and examined the door by which the ghost had entered. It was double locked, as he had locked it with his own hands, and the bolts were undisturbed. He tried to say, "Oh," but stopped at the first syllable. And then, either from the fatigues of the day, being overcome by the hour, his glimpse into the invisible world, his conversation with the ghost, or the emotion of the time, being in much need of repose, went straight to bed, without undressing, and fell asleep upon the instant. When Scrooge awoke, it was so dark that he could scarcely help distinguishing the transparent window from the opaque walls. Endeavouring to pierce the darkness with his ferret eyes, he heard the sounds of the neighbouring church's chimes. Why, it is impossible that I could have slept for a whole day and far into the next night. It is impossible. And then, on a sudden, he remembered the prediction of the ghost when the bell told why. He resolved to lay awake the entire hour. And, since he could no more go to sleep than go to heaven, this was perhaps the wisest resolution in his power. The quarter passed so long that more than once Scrooge thought he must have sunk into a doze unconsciously. But at length, the bell struck upon his listening ear. A quarter passed. A quarter to it. Now a quarter to it. The hour itself. One. The light flashed in the room upon the instant, and the curtains of his bed were drawn aside. I tell you, my hand! Scrooge, sitting up into a half-recumbent attitude, found himself face to face with the unearthly visitor who had drawn them aside. Are you the spirit, sir, whose coming was foretold to me? I am. Who and what are you? I am the ghost of Christmas past. The long past? No, your past. Right. And what would be? It would have been vain for Scrooge to plead that the weather and the hour were not adapted to pedestrian purposes, or that the bed was warm and the thermometer a long, long way below freezing, or that he was clad but lightly in his dressing gown, nightcap, and slippers, and he had a cold upon him at the time. The ghost's touch, though gentle as woman's hand, was not to be resisted. He rose, but then finding that the spirit made towards the window, he clasped its robes in supplication. I am mortal, and liable to fall. Bear but a touch of my hand. There. And you shall be upheld in more than this. As these words were spoken, they found themselves on an open country road, with fields on either hand. Good heavens! I was bred in this place. I was a boy here. You recollect the way? Remember it? Spirit. You can walk it blindfold. Strange to have forgotten it for so many years. Let us go on. They walked down the path, Scrooge recognizing every gate, post, and tree, until a little market town appeared in the distance, with its winding river, its church, its bridge, and there were boys and girls coming up the path. Oh, and they were shouting to each other with merriness and glee that the crisp air laughed to hear it. These are but the shadows of things that have passed. They have no consciousness of us. The jocund travellers came on, and as they did so, Scrooge knew and named each one of them. Oh my, look, there's Logan. Oh, look, it's Ari and Adam and Abby. Oh my goodness, it's Rebecca. Oh, wow. I can't believe it. I haven't seen them for so long. This is amazing. Why did his cold eye glisten and his heart leap up as they went past? Why was he filled with joy and gladness when he heard them shout, "Merry Christmas!" to one another? What was Merry Christmas to Scrooge? Out upon Merry Christmas! What good had it ever done for him? The school in town is not quite deserted. A solitary child remains there still, neglected by his friend. Scrooge said he knew it. And he saw it. The ghost disclosed a long, bare, melancholy room, made barer still by its plain desks and plain forms. At a stool, near a feeble fire, sat a lonely boy, reading with his desk. And Scrooge knelt down upon a form and wept to see his poor, forgotten self as he had used to be. And then, in a rapidity of transition very foreign to his usual character, he said, "Oh, I wish, and it's too late now. What is the matter?" "Oh, there was a boy singing a carol at my house last night. I wish..." "Nothing. Let us see another Christmas." They were now in the busy thoroughfares of the city, where shadowy carts passed and repassed, and shadowy passengers fought for their way, and the coaches also made through to the rapids. It was made plain here, too, that it was Christmas time again, because of the dressing of the shops, and it was night, and the streets were lighted up. The ghost took Scrooge to a warehouse door, and asked him if he knew it. "Oh, know it, Spirit? Oh, I was apprenticed here." They went in, and at the sight of an old Welsh man, or rather a Welsh wig, sat an old man. Scrooge grew and yelled out in great excitement, It's old Fezziwig! It's Fezziwig alive again! Oh, bless his heart! Oh, my!" Old Fezziwig put down his pen, looked up at the clock that struck the hour of 7, rubbed his hands together, adjusted his capacious waistcoat, laughed all over himself, and cried, "Yo-ho there, Ebenezer, Richard!" In came Scrooge's former self, now a grown young man, followed closely by his apprentice. "Oh, my goodness, the Spirit is Richard Williams, to be sure. Oh, my, he was very much attached to me, Spirit, very much. Oh, dear. Richard, Ebenezer, no more work tonight. Christmas Eve, boys, Christmas Eve. In here, let's clear this place up. We've got lots of space here." Clear away? There was nothing they couldn't clear away, or wouldn't clear away, with old Fezziwig looking on. It was done in a minute. In came a fiddler with a music box, and went up to the lofty desk and made an orchestra of it. In came Mrs. Fezziwig, one vast, substantial smile. In came the 3 Miss Fezziwigs, beaming and lovable. In came the 6 poor young lads, whose hearts they broke. In they all came, one after another, everyone employed in the business, and when they were all present, Fezziwig stood up, clapping his hands to stop the music, he said, "Well done!" There was music, there were dancers, there were forfeits and more dancers, and a great cold roast, and plenty of pudding and drink. But The great effect of the evening came when the fiddler struck up a merry tune, and old Fezziwig held out his hand to dance with Mrs. Fezziwig. At length, the domestic ball was broke up, when the hour struck 10. And Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig, taking their stations on either side of the door, shook hands with every person, him and her, individually as they went out, wishing them a Merry Christmas. During this whole time, Scrooge's heart and soul were in the scene, and with his former self. He remembered everything, enjoyed everything, and underwent the strangest agitation. For when he was looking at his former self in Richard, and then their faces were turned from him, he became fully conscious of the ghost looking straight at his eyes. Don't do that again, spirit. Oh my. Oh. A strange little thing to make these silly folks so full of gratitude. Strange, spirit? No, it isn't that. It's not strange at all. Fezziwig has the power to make us happy or unhappy, to make our work a burden or light, to make our pleasure light also or toilsome. To say that his power lies in the smallest things, as smiles and words, what then, even if they can't be counted up? The happiness it gives is greater than if it cost a fortune. What is the matter? Nothing. Something, I think. I should like to have a word or two with my clerk. That is all. Quick, my time grows short. This was not said to anyone that Scrooge could see, nor to himself, but it produced an immediate effect. For Scrooge then saw himself sitting by a girl, a beautiful young lady in a morning dress, in whose eyes there were tears. It matters little, very little. Another idol has displaced me. And if it can cheer and comfort you in time to come, as I would have tried to do, I have no just cause to grieve. What idol has displaced you? A golden one. I have seen your nobler aspirations fall off one by one, until the master passion gain consumes you. Have I not? What then? If I'm so much wiser than I was then, I'm not changed towards you. Am I? Our contract is an old one. It was made when we were both poor and content to be so. What was made in happiness is now fraught with misery that we are two. Oh, how often and how keenly I have thought of this, I will not say. It is enough that I have thought of it and can release you. Well, have I ever sought release? In words? No. Well, in what then? In what? In a changed nature! In everything that made my love of any worth and value to you. Tell me, if this had not happened between us, would you try to win me now and seek me out? No. You think not? I would gladly think otherwise if I could. Heaven knows. But if you were free today, tomorrow, yesterday, could even I think that you would choose a dowerless girl? You who weigh everything by a game. I release you with a heart full of love for the man you once were. What has passed between us half makes me hope that you shall have some pain in this. A very, very brief time. And then you will dismiss it gladly as an unprofitable dream from which it was well that you awoke. May you be happy in the life you have chosen. She left him and they parted. Spirit, remove me from this place! Why do you delight in torturing me? One shadow more. No, no, Spirit, I do not wish to see it. But the relentless ghost forced him to observe what happened next. They were in another room, not very large, but full of comfort. And there to the winter fire sat a beautiful young girl, so much like the lad that Scrooge believed it was the same, until he saw her. And she was now a comely matron, sitting opposite her daughter. The noise in this room was perfectly tumultuous. For Scrooge, in his agitated state of mind, could not count how many children there were. The consequences of which were uproarious beyond belief. But no one seemed to care. On the contrary, the mother and her daughter laughed heartily, and the latter, soon beginning to be mingled in with the sports, was pillaged by the young brigands most ruthlessly. And then there was a knock at the door, and she, with laughing face, was flushed to the center of a boisterous group, just in time to greet the father, who came home laden with Christmas toys and presents, and set them down upon the children, well, not right on them, but set them down next to the children. And then Scrooge looked on more attentively than ever. For when the master of his house, having his daughter leaning fondly on him, sat down by his own fireside with her and her mother, he said, "Belle, I saw an old friend of yours this afternoon." "Oh, who was it?" Well, Mr. Scrooge." "Mr. Scrooge it was. I passed by his office window, and as it was not shut up, and he had a candle inside, I could scarcely help seeing him. His partner lies upon the point of death, I hear. There he sat alone, quite alone in the world. Spirit, remove me from this place! I cannot bear it! Scrooge was conscious of being exhausted and overcome with an irresistible drowsiness, and finding himself back in his own room, he lay down to bed and sunk into a deep and heavy sleep. Awakening in the middle of a prodigiously tough snore, Scrooge had no occasion to be told that the bell was again upon the stroke of 1. For he found himself in his bed, the very core and center of a blaze of ruddy light, which streamed upon him as the clock proclaimed the hour, and, being only light, was more alarming than a dozen ghosts. At last, however, he began to think that the source and secret of this ghostly light might be in the adjoining room, from whence, upon further tracing, it seemed to shine. The idea taking full possession of his mind, he got up and shuffled in his slippers to the door. As his hand was upon the lock of the door, a strange voice called him by name and bade him enter. Scrooge! It was his own room. There was no doubt about that. But it had undergone a surprising transformation. The walls and ceiling were so hung with living green that it looked a perfect grove. From every part of which bright gleaming berries glistened, and heaped upon the centre of the floor, to form a kind of throne with turkey, geese, game, poultries, brawn, great joints of meat, long reeds of sausages, suckling pigs, barrels of oysters, red-hot chestnuts, cherry-cheeked apples, immense 12 cakes, juicy pears, luscious oranges, and seething bowls of punch that made the chamber dim by the delicious steam. In easy state, upon this couch, there stood a jaunty giant, glorious to see, who held a glowing torch in his hand, and held it high to shine its light on Scrooge. Come in and know me better, man. I am the ghost of Christmas present. Look upon me. You've never seen the likes of me before. Never, spirit. Oh. Conduct me where you will. I went last night upon compulsion, and I learned a lesson that is working now. If you have aught to teach me, let me profit by it. Touch my robe. Scrooge did as he was told, and here it found. Turkey, geese, game, poultry, brawn, red berries, ivy, mistletoe, suckling pigs, punch, fruit, everything in the room vanished instantly. So did the fire, the ruddy glow, the hour of night. And they stood upon the streets on Christmas morning, where, for the weather was severe, the people made a brisk but not unpleasant type of music as they were shoveling their snow from off the front of their dwellings and from the tops of their houses. There was nothing very cheerful in the climate of the town, but yet there was an air of cheerfulness abroad. For, Scrooge looking at the people at the top of the houses, they were shouting to one another with glee and joy, now and again exchanging a facetious snowball, laughing heartily if it went right, and not less heartily if it went wrong. Scrooge, lots of children. Scrooge and the spirit went again into the streets, and were invisible as before. Now, it was a remarkable quality of the ghost that, notwithstanding his gigantic size, he could accommodate himself to any place with ease. And perhaps it was the good, hearty nature of the ghost that led them straight to Scrooge's clerks. But there they went, and he took Scrooge with him. The spirit stopped at Bob Cratchit's door, smiled, and blessed his home. Inside approached Mrs. Cratchit, dressed but poorly in a twice-turned gown, but brave in ribbons, which are good and make a very wonderful show for 6p. She was assisted in laying the cloth by Belinda Cratchit, second of her daughters, also brave in ribbons, while Master Peter Cratchit plunged his fork into the saucepan of potatoes, while two young Cratchits came in, danced around the table, and exalted Master Peter Cratchit to the skies, who, blowing the fire, kept the potatoes just right until they came bubbling up and hit the lid to be let out and peeled. Oh, what has ever got your precious father then? And your brother, Tiny Tim? No, no, oh, there's father now, cried the two young Cratchits, who were everywhere at once. In came Bob, the father, dressed very nicely, but seasonable as well for the time, in his best careworn dress. And upon his shoulder, Tiny Tim. Alas, for poor Tiny Tim, he bore a little crutch and had his lid supported by an iron frame. And then came the dinner. And oh, was it wonderful! Bob believed that there was never such a goose cooked. Its tenderness and flavour were themes of universal admiration. And then, oh, the pudding. The pudding. Bob said, and calmly too, that he regarded it as the greatest success ever achieved by Mrs. Cratchit since their marriage. And then, the dinner done, the cloth swept up, the hearth made, and the fire roared. Bob Cratchit stood and said, "A Merry Christmas, my dears. God bless us. God bless us all."
Oh, God bless us, everyone,
cried Tiny Tim, last of all. He sat by his father's side, on his little stool, and Bob held his withered little hand in his, and dreaded that he might be taken from him. Spirit, tell me if Tiny Tim will live, said Scrooge with an interest he had never felt before. I see a vacant seat on a poor chimney corner, with the crotch without an owner, carefully preserved. If these shadows remain unaltered, the child will die. Billy, no, no, say that he will be spared. If these shadows remain unaltered, none other of my race shall find him here. What then? If he be like to die, he'd better do it, and decrease the surplus population. Scrooge hung his head to hear his own words quoted by the Spirit, and was overcome with penitence and grief.
There will now be a 10-minute intermission.
What time are we starting?
In like 3-4 minutes, so you can sit down. She's gonna flash the lights eventually, and that's the minute mark. So, has anyone commented in the chat?
Just be quiet because Johnny said the microphone's on. Currently, I haven't been on camera yet.
That's good.
Yeah.
You think it's been going good?
There's 2 times that Mr. Ernest is sitting in a chair and I had to find it, but otherwise it's been fine.
Just watch for it this time. I don't think he's sitting down much more though.
This arm at the very beginning right here. Do you want to do this? Do you want to do this?
Mr. Scrooge! I give you Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast. The founder of the feast indeed. I wish I had him here. I give him a piece of my mind to feast upon, and I hope he hath an appetite for it. My dear, the children, Christmas Day. It should be Christmas Day that one drinks to the health of such an odious, stingy, hard, unfeeling man as Mr. Scrooge. You know he is but, my dear, Christmas Day. I'll drink to his health for your sake and for the day's, but not for his. By this time it was getting dark, and snowing pretty heavily, and Scrooge and the spirit were again upon their travels. They looked into the kitchens and parlours and all sorts of rooms where the blazing fire was wonderful. And here, the flickering of the flames revealed preparations for a cozy dinner. Hot plates baking through, and deep red curtains ready to be drawn to shut out cold and darkness. Spirit, what is this place? It was a great surprise to Scrooge that, while listening to the moaning of the wind, to hear a hearty laugh. It was a greater surprise to Scrooge to recognize the laugh as that of his own nephews, and to find himself in a bright, dry, gleaming room with the spirit standing smiling by his side and looking at that same nephew with approving affability. Laughed Scrooge's nephew. If by any unlikely chance you should happen to meet a man more blessed in a laugh, all I can say is, I should like to know him too. When Scrooge's nephew laughed in the way, holding his sides, rolling his head, and twisting his face in the most extravagant contortions, Scrooge's niece, by marriage, laughed as heartily as he, and so did all their guests, for not being a bit behindhand. They roared out lustily. He said Christmas was a humbug, as I live. And he believed it too. Well, more the shame for him, Fred, said Scrooge's niece indignantly. She was very pretty, exceedingly pretty, with a bright little dimpled face and a surprised-looking capital brow, and a bright little mouth which seemed to be made to be kissed. She was altogether what you would call provoking, you know, but satisfactory too. Oh yes, very, very satisfactory. He is not as pleasant as he should be, my dear, but his offences carry their own punishment, and I have nothing to say against him. Well, you do tell me that he is rich, Fred. At least you always do tell me that. What of that, my dear? His wealth is of no use to him. He doesn't do any good with it. He doesn't make himself comfortable with it. He hasn't the slightest satisfaction of thinking he's going to benefit us with it. Well, I have no patience with him. Scrooge's niece's sisters and all other ladies present were of the same opinion. Well, I do. I couldn't be angry with him if I tried. Who suffers from his ill whims? Himself, always. Here he takes it into his mind to dislike us, to not come and dine with us. What's the consequence? He don't miss much of a dinner. On the contrary, I think he misses a very fine dinner. Everyone else said the same. And they must have been able to be competent judges, for they had just had dinner, with the dessert now upon the table. Oh, I am very glad to hear it. Yes, thank you very much. I think so as well. Oh, but do go on, Fred. He never finishes what he starts. He's such a ridiculous fellow. What I was going to say is that him taking a dislike to us is, I think he loses some pleasant moments, which could do him no harm. He loses pleasanter companions than he has in his own thoughts, in his moldy chamber of dusty office. I mean to give him the same chance every year, whether he likes it or not, for I pity him. After tea, they had some music, for they were a musical family and knew what they were about. But they didn't devote the whole evening to music. After a while, they played at forfeits, for it is good to be children sometimes, and never better than at Christmas. Scrooge's niece was not one of the blind man's buff party, but there she sat in a large chair in the corner of the room with a footstool, Scrooge and the spirit very close behind her. But she did play at forfeits, and in the game of how, when, and where, she was very great. And, to the secret joy of Scrooge's nephew, beat her sister's hollow. Though they were sharp girls too. There must have been 20 people there or so, both old and young, and they all played, and so did Scrooge. For wholly forgetting in the interest he had in what was going on, that his voice made no sound in their ears, he often came out with his "yes!" quite loudly. Very often, quite right. The spirit stood and just loved the mood that Scrooge was now in, and looked upon him with such favour that Scrooge begged like a boy to be allowed to stay until all the guests departed. But this, the spirit said, could not be done. Spirit, here's another game, right here. Just a half hour more. Just a half hour more, Spirit. It's a good one. Oh, yes, I think it is. Oh, yes. It was a game called Yes and No, where Scrooge's nephew had to think of something, and everyone else had to guess what. He only answering their questions, yes or no, as the case was. At every fresh question put to this nephew, he burst into a fresh roar of laughter, and was so inexpressibly tickled that he had to get up off the sofa and stare upon his feet. The plump sister in the corner, falling into the similar state, came out and cried, "I know it, Fred! I know it!" "What is it?" "It's your Uncle Scrooge!" Which it certainly was. He's giving us plenty of merriment, I'm sure. But it would be ungrateful not to drink to his health. Here's a glass, and I say, "Uncle Scrooge!" "Well, Uncle Scrooge!" they all said. "A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to the old man." Whatever he is. Scrooge had become so irresistibly light of heart that he would have thanked the unconscious company in return, and done so in an inaudible speech, if the ghost had given him time. But at the last breath of the last words spoken by his nephew, the scene changed, and Scrooge and the spirit were again upon their travels. When standing together in an open place, Scrooge noticed that the spirit's hair was grey. Well, Spirit, are ghost lives so short? My life upon this globe is very short. It ends tonight. Well, tonight? Tonight at midnight. Hark! The time draws near. At that moment, the 11:03 bell rung out. Spirit, forgive me for what I ask, but I see something strange and not belonging to yourself beneath your robe. Is it a foot? Or is it a claw? Look here. From beneath the folding of its robes, it brought 2 children, hideous, wretched, abject. They were a boy and a girl, yellow, meager, wolfish, scowling and ragged, but prostrate too in their humility. Where youthful grace should have filled their features out, a hand like that of age, shriveled and pinched and twisted and pulled them apart. Scrooge backed away. For having them shown to him in this manner, he tried to say that they were fine children, but the words choked themselves, rather than be parties to a lie of such enormous magnitude. Spirit, are they yours? They are man's, and they cling to me appealing from their fathers. This boy is ignorance, this girl is want. Beware them both, and all that agree, but most of all, beware this boy, for I see that which is written upon his brow, doom unless the writing be erased.
Have they no refuge or resource?
Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses? The bell struck 12. And Scrooge looked about for the ghost and saw it not. But at the last stroke of 12, as it ceased to vibrate, he remembered the prediction of old Jacob Marley, and lifting up his eyes, beheld a third, solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming like a mist along the ground towards him. The phantom slowly, gravely, silently approached, and as it did so, Scrooge bent down upon a knee, for the very air through which the spirit moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and mystery. It was shrouded in a deep black garment which concealed its face, its hood, its form, and left nothing visible save one outstretched hand. But for this, it would have been difficult to detach its figure from the night and to separate it from the darkness by which it was surrounded. Scrooge felt it was tall and stately as it stood beside him, and its mysterious presence filled him with a solemn dread. He knew no more, for the ghost neither spoke nor moved.
Am I in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come?
The spirit gave him no answer, but pointed onward with its hand.
You are about to show me the things that will be but have not happened yet. Is that so, spirit?
The upper portion of its garment contracted for such an instant, as though it inclined its head. He received no answer other than this. Yes, spirit. Although well used to ghostly company at this time, Scrooge feared the solemn shape so much that his legs trembled beneath him, and he could hardly stand as he prepared to follow. The spirit, observing his condition, paused, giving him time to recover. But Scrooge was all the worse for this, for it thrilled him with a vague and uncertain horror to know that beneath that dusky shroud there were ghostly eyes fixed intently upon him, though he saw nothing but one outstretched hand and a great heap of black.
Ghost of the future, I fear you more than any other spirit I have met. But as I know your purpose is to do me good, and as I hope to be another man than what I was, I am prepared to bear your company, and to do it with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me?
The spirit moved not 1 inch, but continued to point onward.
Lead on, spirit. Lead on. The night is waning fast, and it is precious time to me, I know. Lead on.
The spirit moved away as it had come toward, and Scrooge followed in the shadow of its dress, which bore him up, he thought, and carried him along. They had scarcely seemed to enter the city, when the city seemed to spring up about them of its own art. And there they were, in the heart of it, amongst the merchants and businessmen who were talking and walking to and fro, chinking the money in their pockets.
Yes.
talking with one another, how are you? And trifling about with their great gold seals, very shiny, just as Scrooge had seen them before. The spirit stopped and pointed to one little knot of businessmen. Scrooge, observing that the hand was pointed towards them, advanced to listen to their talk. No, I don't know much about it either way. I only know he's dead. When did he die? Last night, I believe. What was the matter with him? I thought he'd never go. Heaven knows. What's he done with his money? Beats me. Maybe given it to his company. He hasn't given it to me, that's all I know. This pleasantry was received with a general laugh. It's likely to be a cheap funeral. For on my life, I don't know who'd go to it. I would, if lunch is provided. I don't mind going. I'm the most disinterested among you, though, for I don't wear black gloves. And I don't eat lunch. But I'm not at all sure that I wasn't his most particular friend. For we used to stop and talk whenever we met. Bye-bye. Speakers and listeners mingled with one another, and Scrooge knew those men, and looked the ghost for an explanation. But the ghost, gliding through the streets, pointed to two persons leading. And Scrooge knew these men also. They were businessmen, very wealthy, and of great importance. He always tried to put himself high in their regard, strictly in a business point of view, that is. In a business point of view. Oh, hello. How are you? How are you? Oh, well, seems old Scratch finally got his own, eh? Seems so. Oh, it's cold out, isn't it? Seasonable for Christmas time. You're not a skater, I suppose? No. Something to think of, though. Good morning. Not another word. That was their meeting, their conversation, and their party. Scrooge was inclined to be half surprised as to why the spirit should attach such importance to conversations apparently so trivial. But, feeling assured that they must have some purpose, he set his mind to consider what it may be. No, they could scarcely have any bearing to the death of Jacob. That was the past, and this ghost province was the future. Nor could he think of anyone immediately connected with himself to whom he could apply them. But, nothing doubting that they must apply to someone, and that they must have some latent moral for his improvement, he resolved to treasure up every word he heard and everything he saw. He recoiled in terror, for the scene had changed. And now he found himself in a room almost touching a bed, a bare, uncurtained bed, beneath which a ragged sheet. There lay something covered up, which, though it was dumb, announced itself with awful language. The room was too dark to be observed with any accuracy, but Scrooge tried as he might, obeying some secret impulse, for he was filled with anxiety to know what type of room it was. And then a pale light rose in the outer air and fell straight upon the bed. And there, plundered, bereft, unwatched, unwept, uncared for, was the body of this man. Scrooge glanced towards the phantom. Its spectral hand was pointed directly to the head. Its cover was so carelessly adjusted that the slightest raising of it would have disclosed the face. He thought of it, felt how easy it would be to do, and longed to do it. But had no more power to withdraw this veil than to dismiss the spectre at his side. Oh, rigid, dreadful death, set upon thine altar here, and dress it with those terrors which thou hast at thy command, for this is thy dominion. He thought, if this man could be raised up now, what would be his foremost thoughts? Avarice? Hard dealing? Griping cares? They had brought him to a rich end, truly. Here he lay, in an empty house, with not a man, a woman, or a child to say that he was kind to me, in this or that. And for the memory of one kind word, I will be kind to him in return. There was a cat tearing at the door, and the sound of rats gnawing was heard beneath the hearthstone. What they wanted in this room of death, and what disturbed them and made them so restless, Scrooge did not dare to think.
Oh, Spirit, this is a fearful place.
In leaving it, I will not leave its lesson. Let us go. The Spirit's hand did not move, but continued to point ahead.
I understand you, and I would do it if I could, but I have not the power, Spirit. I have not the power.
Again, the spectre seemed to look full upon him.
Spirit, if there is any person in this town that has emotion caused by this man's death, I beseech you, Spirit, show that person to me.
The phantom raised its robes before him like a wing, and withdrawing it, revealed a room by daylight where a mother and her daughter were. She was expecting someone, and with anxious eagerness, for she walked up and down the room, glanced at the clock, started at every sound, tried but in vain to work with her needle, and could hardly stand the noise of the children playing. Oh, stop, my dear, stop. At length, the long-expected knock was heard. She ran to the door to meet her husband, a man whose face was careworn and depressed, though he was young. But there was a remarkable expression in it now, a kind of serious delight for which he felt ashamed and which he struggled to repress. He sat down to take his dinner, which had been hoarding for him by the fire, and when she asked him what news, he struggled on how to answer.
Is it good, or is it bad?
Well, bad. Oh, we are ruined then. We are quite ruined. No, Caroline. There is still hope yet.
If he is past relenting, there is. Nothing is past hope. If that miracle has occurred.
Well, he is past relenting. He's dead. She was a patient and mild creature, if her face spoke true. But she was thankful in her soul, and said it too, with clasped hands. She asked for forgiveness in the next moment, and was sorry. But the first was the emotion of her heart. When I went to ask for a week's delay, and what I thought was an excuse to avoid me, turned out to be quite true. He was not only ill, but dying then.
Oh, not yet be transferred?
I don't know. But before that time, we shall have the money. And we would have bad fortune indeed if we met so merciless a creditor as he. We shall sleep with light hearts tonight, Caroline.
Yes. Soften their hearts as they would. Their hearts were lighter, and the children's faces hushed and cluttered around to hear what they so little understood were brighter. And this home was happier indeed because of this man's death. Spirit, show me some tenderness connected with the death, or that dark chamber we have left just now will be forever present with me. The Spirit conducted him on streets familiar to his feet, and Scrooge looked here and there for himself. But nowhere was he to be seen. They entered poor Bob Cratchit's house, a dwelling he had visited before, and there the mother and her daughter were seated round the fire. Quiet. Very quiet. The two noisy Cratchits were still as statues in one corner of the room, looking up at Master Peter Cratchit, who had a book in his hand. The mother and her daughters were busy sewing, but they, rest assured, were very, very quiet. And he took a child and set him in the midst of them. Where had Scrooge heard those words? He had not dreamed them. The boy must have read them aloud as he and the Spirit crossed the threshold. And why did he stop? The mother laid her work down upon the table and brought her hands to her eyes. The colour, it hurts my eyes. The colour? No, not the colour. Oh, they're better now. I wouldn't want to show weak eyes to your father. They are weak by candlelight. It must be near his time now. As if rather, said Master Peter Cratchit, although he has been walking a lot slower these days, Mother. They were quiet again. At last she spoke again, in a voice that only faltered once. I have known him to walk with him. To walk. For him to walk with time with him. Very fast indeed. And he was so light, it was no trouble. No trouble at all. Oh, here's your father at the door now. She went to the door and let him in, and Bob, in his comforter, he had need of one, poor fellow, came in. His tea was ready for him on the hob, and they all tried to see who should help him to it first. And then the two little Cratchits, as Bob was sitting, got upon his knee, and each child laid a little cheek against his, as though they said, "Don't mind it, Father. Don't be grieved." Bob was very cheerful with them, and spoke pleasantly to them all. He looked at the table and praised the industry and speed of Mrs. Cratchit and the girls. They would well be ready before Sunday. Oh, before Sunday, Bob? You went today? Yes, my dear. It would have been good for you to come, but you'll see it often. It's a wonderful, wonderful green place. I promised him that I'd walk there on Sunday. My little child. My little child. He broke down all at once. He couldn't help it. He left
and went to the room upstairs, which was lighted cheerfully and hung with Christmas. There, a chair set next to a bed, and there were signs of someone having been there lately. And poor Bob sat down upon a chair and thought to himself a little. And reconciling what had happened, he went down again and was quite cheerful. They gathered round the fire, and Bob told them of the extraordinary kindness of Scrooge's nephew, who, having seen him only once, came up to him in the streets that day and noticed that he was just a little down, you know, said Bob, presented him with his card, and said, "Pray, that is where I live. Come visit me. I am heartily sorry for your loss. Please, you and your good wife, come visit me." "Well, how he knew that," said Bob, "I'll never know." "Well, knew what, my dear?" "Why, that you were a good wife." "Well, everybody knows that," said Peter. "Well observed, my boy, well observed. I hope they do. But we now shall none of us forget this first party among us, shall we? Mr. Scrooge's nephew is so kind, that it is as if he knew Tiny Tim and felt with us. I'm sure he's a very wonderful soul. You would be sure others, my dear, if you saw him and spoke with him. Rest assured, mark my words, if he doesn't give Peter a better situation." "Oh, only hear that, Peter." "And then," cried one of the young little Cratchits, "Peter will be keeping company with someone and settling down for himself." "Oh, get along with you two," cried Peter, grinning. "It's just as likely as not, it's just as likely as not. But whenever we have, and however we have, these partings from us, we shall not forget poor Tiny Tim. Shall we? Never, Father, never. And I know, my dears, that when we recollect how mild and how patient he was, for he was just a little child, we shall not quarrel so easily among ourselves and forget poor Tiny Tim in doing it." "Never, Father." Mrs. Cratchit kissed him. His two daughters kissed him. The two young Cratchits kissed him. And he and Peter shook hands. Tiny Tim, by childish essence, was from God. Spirit, something informs me that our parting moment is at hand. I know it, but I know not how. Tell me, what man that was whom we saw lying dead? The Spirit conveyed him as before into the resorts of businessmen, but showed him not himself. Indeed, the Spirit did not stop for anything, but went straight on to the end, as just now desired, until Scrooge sought him to tarry. Spirit, you're very tall. Spirit, yes. The court through which we hurry now is my place of occupation, and it has been for quite some time. Let me see what I may become in the future. The Spirit stopped, but pointed elsewhere with his hand. But the house is yonder. Why do you point away? The inexorable finger underwent no change. Scrooge went to the window and looked in. It was an office still, but not his own. The furniture was not the same, and the figure sitting in the chair was not himself. The Spirit had not moved. and joining it again, he wondered, and wondered why, and whither he had gone, and then accompanied it until they reached an iron gate. He paused to look round before entering. A churchyard. Here, then, the wretched man whose name he had now to learn lay beneath the ground. Oh, it was a worthy place, walled in by houses and overcome with grass and weeds. The growth of vegetation's death, not life, choked up with too much burying. The spirit stood among the graves and pointed down to one. Scrooge advanced towards it, trembling. The phantom was always as it had been, but he wondered if he saw new meaning in its solemn shape. Spirit, before I read what is upon that stone, tell me, are these the shadows of things that will be, or that may be only? The spirit did not move, but continued to point down to the grave. Men's courses, if persevered in, will foreshadow certain ends. But if those courses be departed from, the ends will change as well. Tell me it is thus with what you show me! The spirit did not move, and its finger was straight and solid. Scrooge crept towards it, and following the finger, read upon the stone of the neglected grave his own name. Ebenezer Scrooge! Am I the man who lay upon the bed? The spirit pointed down to the grave, and back to him, and then to the grave again. No! No, spirit! No! No! The finger was still there. Spirit, hear me. I am not the man I was. I will not be the man I must have been, save for this intercourse. Why show this to me if I am beyond all hope? For the first time, the hand seemed to tremble. Spirit, assure me that I may change these shadows by an altered life. The kind hand shook and trembled more. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. I will try to keep Christmas in my heart and live it all the year. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I shall not shut out the lessons they teach. Oh, tell me that I may smudge out the writing upon this stone. In his agony, he caught the spectral hand. It tried to free itself, but he was strong in his entreaty. The spirit, stronger yet, repulsed him. And Scrooge, having his hands clasped in a final prayer to have his fate reversed, saw an alteration in the phantom's hood and dress. It sunk, dwindled, and collapsed into a bedpost. The bedpost was his own. The bed was his own. The room was his own. And better yet, the time before him was his own. To make amends in. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. Oh, the spirits of all three shall strive within me. Oh, heaven and Christmas time be praised for this. I say it on my knees, Jacob, on my knees. Oh, he was so fluttered and glowing with good intentions that his broken voice could scarcely answer to his call. He had been sobbing violently with his conflict with the spirit, but now he felt something different. The shadows of things that may be, they can be dispelled. They will. I know they will. Oh, he was so what to do with his garments. He put them on, upside down and inside out. He dressed himself in what he thought was his best clothes. But, getting up, he felt that he was properly ready. Yes, this looks good, I think, David. Oh, you're not here anymore. Oh, okay. I'm happy. Oh, I'm as happy as an angel. I'm as light as a feather. Oh, I'm as merry as a schoolboy. Oh, I'm as giddy as a drunken man. Oh. Merry Christmas. Oh, I said it. Merry Christmas! Oh, Merry Christmas! Hello there. He frisked into the sitting room, and there, out of breath, he saw the saucepan where the gruel was. Oh, and here's the corner where the ghost of Christmas present sat. Oh, and there's the window where I saw the wandering spirits, and the door through which the ghost of Jacob Marley entered. Oh, it all happened. It was all true. It was all here. Woo! Hello. Merry Christmas. Really, for a man who is out of practice, it was a splendid laugh. A most illustrious laugh. Father to a long, long line of brilliant laughs. But now, he said to himself, oh, I don't know what day of the month it is. I don't know how long I've been amongst the spirits. Oh, I don't know anything. Never mind, I don't care. He was distracted from his thoughts by the church ringing out the lustiest peals he'd ever heard. He ran to the window, and he opened it and stuck out his head. Oh, no fog, clear, no mist, golden sky, heavenly light. Oh, merry bells. Oh, glorious, glorious. What's today? Said Scrooge, calling down to a young boy dressed in church clothes, who perhaps had loitered in to look about him. What's today, my fine fellow? Today? Why, today's Christmas Day. Christmas Day? I haven't missed it. I haven't missed it at all. They did it all in one night. The spirits did. They can do anything they like. Of course they can. Hello there. Hello. Do you know the porterers in the next corner, the block over there? Do you know it? The one over there? Yes, I should hope I did. Oh, what a remarkable lad. An intelligent lad. Do you know if they have the prize turkey there? Not the little one, but the big one. The big one. You mean the one as big as me? Yes. A remarkable boy. I rather enjoy talking to him. Yes, that one right there. Is it still hanging there? It still is. Oh, it is. Go and buy it. Go and buy it and tell them to bring it here, and I'll give them directions of where to take it. Go and bring back the man, and I'll give you a shilling. Bring back in 5 minutes, and I'll give you half a crown for it. The boy was off like a shot. I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's house. He shan't know who sends it. It's twice the size of Tiny Tim. The hand with which he wrote the letter was not a steady one, but write it he did, somehow. And then he went out upon the streets, dressed as he was, to wait for the porter's man. Yes. As he stood there, he happened to see the knocker. Oh, wonderful. Oh, it's so wonderful. Look at that. I have never quite seen how honest its expression is. Oh, it really is splendid. Oh my, I shall love it as long as I live. Oh, here's the turkey. Oh, it was a turkey. That bird could have never stood upon its own legs. It would have snapped them off in a minute like sealing wax. Oh my. Well, Merry Christmas. You need a cab to take that into Camden Town. Oh yes, here you go. The chuckle with which he said this and the chuckle with which he paid for the turkey, and the chuckle with which he paid for the crab, were only to be exceeded by the chuckle when he sat down in his own chair and chuckled till he cried. And now he found it more sensible and looked about himself, and he said, "Oh my, I need to dress more properly." So, dressing all in his best, he went outside upon the streets, and the people were coming to and fro, just as he had seen the ghost of Christmas present. And Scrooge, having his hands behind his back, walked along the streets and greeted everyone pleasantly. "Hello. Hello. Good to see you. Merry Christmas." He looked so irresistibly pleasant that 3 or 4 gentlemen stopped him by the way and said, "Oh, Merry Christmas, sir. Merry Christmas to you." Scrooge later said, out of all the blithe words he had ever heard, those were perhaps the blithest in his ears. But now he saw the portly gentleman coming down the road, and it sent a pain across his heart to know what the man might say when they met. But he knew his course, and he took it. "Excuse me, sir, yes, sir. Sorry, you came to my office yesterday, and it was very kind what you were doing. I hope you were successful yesterday." "No! Mr. Scrooge? Mr. Scrooge? That is my name, and I fear it may not be pleasant to you. I beg your pardon. But would you give me the favor of..." Here, Scrooge whispered in his ear, "Mr. Scrooge, are you serious?" "I am, certainly. There's a great many back payments in that, I assure you. Will you do me that favor?" "Well, Mr. Scrooge, I don't know what to say to such munificence." "Say nothing at all. Nothing at all. Will you come and visit me? Please, just come and visit me." "Well, I will. Yes, I will." And it was clear he meant to do it. Scrooge went to church. He walked along the streets and saw the people walking to and fro. He patted children on the head, comforted beggars, and looked down into the kitchens and windows and found that everything could yield him pleasure. Never had any walk or anything in his life brought him so much happiness. And then, in the afternoon, he turned his feet to his nephew's house. He passed the door a dozen times before he had the courage to knock. But he made a dash for it, and he did it. Oh, hello, my dear. Hello, how are you? "Oh, fine, sir. Where's your master, my dear?" "He's in the dining room, sir, with the mistress. I can take you upstairs if you like." No, sir. No. That is okay. I know him. I'll just come in here. Is that okay? I'll just sit right in here. Thank you. He sidled his face round the door and saw the dining room table, which was spread out in great array. Fred! Dear heart alive, how Scrooge's niece by marriage started. He had forgotten for a moment that she was sitting in the corner in the large chair with the footstool, or else he wouldn't have done it on any account. What? Who's there?" cried Scrooge's nephew. "Fred, it is I, your Uncle Scrooge. I have come to dinner." Scrooge's niece looked the same. So did the plump sister when she came. So did everybody when they came. A wonderful party. A wonderful game. Wonderful unanimity. And wonderful happiness. Oh, but he was early the next day for work. Yes, he was. If only he could catch Bob Cratchit coming in late. And that is what he set his heart to. And he did. Oh, yes, he did. As he sat there, he opened his clock. 9 o'clock. No Bob. 9:15. No Bob. He was a full 18 minutes and a half past his time. And Scrooge, sitting with his counting office door wide open, saw Cratchit as he came in, who took off his hat and his comforter, then entered the door, sat upon his desk, and went writing about it, as if he were trying to overtake the hour of 9 o'clock. Hello there. What do you mean by coming in at this hour? Oh, I am sorry, sir. I am rather behind my time. You are? Oh, yes. You are. Step this way, please. Oh, it's only once a year, sir. And, well, I had a rather merry Christmas yesterday. Now, I'll tell you what, my friend. I'm not going to stand this thing any longer. And therefore, I'm going to raise your salary! Bob stopped and looked on the table for a yardstick. He had the momentary thought of hitting Scrooge with it, and knocking him down, jumping upon him, asking for help from the court outside, with a straight waistcoat. A Merry Christmas, Bob. A merrier Christmas than I have given you in many a year. I will raise your salary and endeavour to assist your struggling family. And we shall talk of your affairs this very afternoon, Bob, over a bowl of Christmas smoking bishop. Make up the fire and buy another coal scuttle before you dot another I. Bob Cratchit. Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all, and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, Scrooge was a second father. He was as good a man, as good a friend, as the good old world would ever know, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the entire world. He had no further intercourse with the spirits, but it was always said of him, ever afterwards, that he knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge. And may that truly be said of us, and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone. Now, just one quick moment, if I could. I have Cody Cutler come up to the stage. Where's he at? Cody Cutler, give a round of applause for him. He's the director of the show. I think it's right here in the book. This is for you, Cody. I just want to thank Cody. He did such a fantastic job directing this, and so did all of our technicians. And we just want to give one great round of applause for them. Thank you so much. We're very grateful that we could put this show on. We're very grateful for the American Heritage School and for our Father in Heaven. And we learned today, providentially, that 177 years ago, this very day, A Christmas Carol was published. You just learned that this morning. Thank you again. Have a great evening.
Begin your